in there. It's kind of glitchy. Not sure if my internet connection is holding up or not. Don't see that we have anybody in here right now, but hopefully we'll get some people dropping in. Take a look at a couple different things that we have. Try to stay on top of all this. So, not a whole lot. This is my first time going live by myself. Haven't done it before. Wanted to talk about some of the things that are going on right now. Hope everybody's staying safe. Hope everybody is practicing a little social distancing. This COVID thing, while doesn't seem to have the death toll right now that the flu does, it still got some real potential to be a problem. So hopefully everybody's doing what they need to do to stay safe and to social distance, keep away from things that are going to give you problems. Obviously, there's an awful lot of stuff going on as far as conspiracy theories, and I don't know. I've gotten a lot of information here since I've shared that I'm actually going to go on here today. A lot of information has come in talking about conspiracy theories with China, about that this was a release that was intentional. I'm not so sure that there's any evidence to support that right now, but there is a lot of evidence to show that the Chinese government themselves did suppress this information from the world and let it go international. There's definitely some accountability on the part of the Chinese government. They did suppress the information, so it is kind of a problem. So I'm not really sure what's going to end up becoming of that. I know the government's looking into it. There's also some question about whether the World Health Organization was complicit with it or not. Supposedly, the Chinese government didn't allow them in. I don't know what the real story is right now. There's just not a lot of good information coming from China. They control their media pretty heavily, and we just don't have a lot of good information. So that's one of the things that you run into. It's very difficult to ferret through when you have a government that has control of the internet, has control of the media, and has control of everything else. So it's really difficult to find out what happened. But that's not really what I wanted to talk about today. What I wanted to really talk about is what's going on in America. And excuse me for not looking up at the camera as much. I'm kind of keeping track of my my notes over on the side here so I can talk about some of these things. Just talking a little bit about COVID to start with, simply because waiting for people to log in, see what's going around, or see what's going on. I did notice quite a few things with the FDA, and it got me thinking. The FDA's original charter was safety versus efficacy. I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but originally they were chartered with looking at drugs to make sure they were safe. That was the only charter. They need to be safe. They've since moved to efficacy, which means they want these drug companies to prove that this thing is effective for this, that, and the other thing. The problem with this is, whenever you get into an efficacy argument, you introduce a huge amount of cost to do studies all over the country. All these medical facilities have these huge infrastructure set up to do this, and the cost is outrageous. A lot of these pharmaceutical companies, people talk about how much they actually charge people, and how much how much money they make. But I think the biggest problem is the cost of going through this process is so high. It makes the cost of the drugs so high. A lot of pharmaceutical companies can't go through the actual FDA approval process without having venture capitalists to come in, or without having a team up with another pharmaceutical company to get through the cost of doing this. I was listening to the FDA talk about this on the radio the other day, and they themselves even admitted on the radio that the cost is so high that a lot of pharmaceutical companies, even though they have a drug that works across a wide range of problems, they'll only get approved for one or two because the cost is so high. They just cannot afford to get through the process. So a whole lot of medications that actually could help a lot of people simply aren't getting approved for those uses in the United States because of the high cost. When we take a look at this in terms of what's happened here, the FDA has been fast-tracking things, allowing them to go very quickly, because safety is easy to prove. Efficacy is a whole nother ballgame. And I think we need to kind of roll that back, because it's got two things. One, we can actually get some of these cures out here quicker. People can actually take them. And two, our pharmaceutical costs are so high that we need to start doing something about it, so that we're not just getting overcharged with this constant cost. And I don't know what you're going to end up doing with that, because it's really a mess. And let's just take a look at the chat here. Not a lot going on, it looks like. But we need to drive these costs down, because they're what's driving a lot of the high cost of insurance, the high cost of our medicines. And clearly, based on what's been happening here, the FDA can get through this process much faster and just show safety. They don't have to show efficacy. They did make an interesting statement when I was listening to them, that if we don't make sure something's effective, then somebody might be taking a drug that simply doesn't work. And when you look at something like we have right now with COVID-19, I guess my answer is, I don't care. I mean, if the choice is die from not taking something or take something that may or may not work, why would you deny me the ability to take something that might work as opposed to die? My father ran into this situation with prostate cancer, and unfortunately, with the prostate cancer, they actually did start a study and found that something was effective for it, specifically the problem he was having, and the pharmaceutical company abandoned it because of the cost of the studies and just dropped it. And the FDA denied him the usage of that drug, even though there had been very good studies that have shown that it did work. They didn't complete the process. And there was no fee he could pay. There was nothing he could do. He just wasn't allowed to have it. And that's, I'm sorry, I don't think a government agency has the right to withdraw treatment if you want to take that treatment. So that's one of the big problems I have with the FDA. Just going through here. So that's, yeah, with the FDA, I guess that's my big thing with the FDA. I think we can reduce a lot of costs by getting rid of that process. We can also do a lot of cost reduction by looking at the rules the AMA has placed within the law that actually drive up the cost of our medical systems. I think we can drop all that down and we can get people more coverage without things like this Obamacare that's bankrupting everybody. The other thing, I'm not really seeing the chats here. At any rate, the other thing is, I want to talk about constitutional rights, because we've got a lot of things going on right now where people are basically not being allowed to work, and governors are shutting things down. They're picking and choosing what they want to shut down. They're picking and choosing what industries they want to have running, what businesses they want to have running. A lot of the small businesses are being told to shut their doors. My neighbor actually had that situation. He works at a pool company, and they were out actually working in the field. They generally set up a pool. It's 3 guys in the middle of a backyard, nobody around them. And they also do delivery of pool chemicals to keep your pools okay. Somebody saw them out there and reported them, and the state police ended up showing it to business and ordered them to shut down or else. And you don't really have the right to do that, and that's one of the big problems. When you talk about shutting down a business, there's something called due process that has to be followed. You need to actually go after the business for a crime, which they didn't commit. You need to actually take them to court, which they didn't do. You need to actually present evidence, which they didn't do. You need to have a court judgment, which they didn't have. And yet they still have police out there saying you will shut those doors or else. And there's where you run into the problem. Our system in this country is set up so we don't have dictators. We don't have governors who could just order things. We don't have police that can just show up and take away your business license, or throw you in jail because you've got a business open. And that's not to say don't be safe. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is we have some constitutional rights that are being violated, and I think we need to take a very serious look at that. Because there's been a long history of governmental abuse. It's been going on since the beginning of time. It's a long-standing thing, not just in this country, but in every country. This country was one of the differences simply because we created a constitution to protect ourselves. The whole point of our government is there's a constitution which defines what they can and what they can't do, and that if they violate that, we need to do something about it. And unfortunately, we're not doing anything about it, and that's one of the problems. We're not holding them accountable. In this particular case, the government has ordered certain businesses to close and certain businesses can stay open. And in the Constitution, there's a thing called a Bill of Attainder. It's an absolute prohibition to doing something like that. The Bill of Attainder was put in the Constitution. It's absolute prohibition. It says Congress shall issue no Bill of Attainder or ex post facto law. And a Bill of Attainder was something that was very, very important to our founding fathers, because the King of England was using it against us. Whenever people were doing things he didn't like or didn't want, he would target them by creating some type of a law that encompassed their little group, and then doing something to them, denying them rights, overtaxing them, whatnot. And we've got prohibition in our Constitution because our founding fathers wanted to make sure that all laws, every single law, every single government action was bounded by the fact that it had to apply evenly across everyone. And we don't have that going on right now. Bill of Attainder was actually fought in the Supreme Court quite a few times. They've never changed on the matter. They've always ruled the same way. Bill of Attainder is a three-part test. Does it single out an individual or group? Test one. Does it impose a punishment, remove rights, or some type of other thing from that group? This is the second one. And does it bar hearing in a court? It's just simply an edict by the government. There was no due process before those things happened. And when you talk about shutting down local businesses and saying that Walmart or those guys can stay open and sell whatever they want, then what you're doing is you're putting together a Bill of Attainder against small businesses. And in this particular case, when you shut down a small business like that, you're crippling them. And I know there's money to pay the payroll and keep people working. But if you have a small business, a lot of them, they have a mortgage, they have electric bills, they have all these other fees that go along, there's insurances. Those don't stop. So while they're not making any money and they can't do any business whatsoever, their businesses are failing. I mean, if you've got a restaurant or a bar that's been shut down, any food you had is going to go bad. You're going to have to rebuy all that inventory when you restart. You still had to pay all those bills when you were shut down, and the government giving you payroll to pay some of your employees doesn't do anything, because at the end of the day, they don't have a job because you failed, you shut down, because the company couldn't stay open. And you really have to ask, what right does the government have to do that, to pick winners and losers? One of the other things that you have to be concerned about is the fact that whenever you take a look at what the government's doing, they've done this for quite a bit. They'll take money and put it into whatever it is that whatever industry that they feel is worth dumping money into, whether it be solar, whether it be wind, both of which are big losers, by the way, environmentally and economically. But they'll throw money into all this stuff, and they'll pick winners and losers with our tax dollars. Now, I didn't do that. I didn't say they could do that. And the Constitution says very, very clearly that they can't take all taxpayers, pull in the money from those taxpayers, redivert it to whatever pet project or whatever pet company or whatever pet industry that they want. That is in itself a Bill of Attainder. They're taking money from one group of people and giving it to another group of people. They're depriving one set and giving the others a benefit. It's been defined by the Supreme Court umpteen times, and it's got to stop. I mean, it's not just closing businesses right now. It's something that's got to be looked at going forward in America. And I think that's one of the things that we've done a bad job of. We're not holding our politicians' feet to the fire. I did take a look, and I've had this for quite a few years. There are an awful lot of laws on the books specifically describing criminal charges for this, for government officials, yet nobody ever uses those laws. They're on the books, they're perfectly enforceable, they have jail time and fines for each and every count, and yet nobody ever seems to act on them. And I think maybe we need to, as a group, take a long, hard look at these actions by the government and start taking a look at which government officials are violating those laws, state and federal, and even local on occasion, and actually doing something about it, which means filing charges and we can actually file civil complaints for violations of rights too. That can be done through the federal court very simply. It costs $400. If you don't have the money, you can actually go in and not pay a dime. You just have to fill out the forms and file. And if we all did that, everybody who was interested in trying to roll back this government nonsense, if we all did that, I think it would make a difference. It would send a real message. We're not going to take it anymore. So that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. I'm trying not to go too long here. I'm trying not to throw too much nonsense into that. Just see my cousin logged in. But I think we need to start standing up as a people, because we don't do that enough. We talk about it. We have rallies. We show up at rallies. But at the end of the day, we don't really make a difference. If you want to scare a politician into actually doing the right thing, file a criminal charge. You want to scare him into doing something, file a civil complaint against him and sue him. You want to do something, flood his phone system so that they can't even get any more calls other than complaint calls. Send emails through their website and flood their emails with complaints. They will notice that. Whenever that stuff starts happening, they start to say, wait, something's going on. And if there's criminal charges and civil charges, you'd be surprised how quickly that people get in line. Because you talk to people out here, they're afraid of the state police. They might shut them down and all the things that they could do to them, even though it's illegal. Well, the police aren't immune to that either. The people are scared of police coming after them, but the police and the bureaucrats are also scared of being prosecuted, and even more so with bureaucrats, they're scared of not getting elected again. And if they think that there's something going on that's going to cause them problems, they will turn around and they will start doing what they're supposed to do. One of the other things I did want to talk about in regards to that is something we have in PA, which we don't have up on the federal level. I think we need to have it. In PA, we have a law that states that any bill that is introduced in Congress has to be on one topic and one topic alone. What that does is it says if you're making, for example, a bill to do funding for payrolls as a result of the damage that COVID-19 is doing, then that bill can only deal with payrolls for COVID-19. You can't tack on all the other crap that the Democrats came in and tacked onto the bill. Interestingly, some of the Republicans actually said that they wanted to tack on a bunch of stuff in the bills, and Republican leadership slammed down on them and said, no, it's not going to happen. You're not going to tack on a bunch of garbage. We're going to handle this, and we're not going to use a crisis to advance a political agenda, which is what they should do. The Democrats swooped in and started adding crap, which we need to take a look at after the fact and pull it back out. We need to get our politicians to take that stuff back out. It has no business being there. Let me just go through my notes here. One of the other things I've been told is that the states under emergency powers do have the right to come around and shut businesses down. It just isn't so. The states under emergency powers have the ability to do quite a bit, but it has to be done evenly across the society, which means if they decide businesses have to be shut down, all businesses have to be shut down. They can't just pick and choose which ones they want. They can't say, well, the big stores can stay open, these little moms and pops have to start closing up. You can't have that kind of thing happen. And they can't pick and choose which industries they like and they don't like. You just cannot do that. It's illegal. The reason is they're targeting people, they're targeting businesses, and at the end of the day, they're destroying livelihoods. Just as bad as throwing somebody in jail for a year. They're coming out with nothing. They lose everything they have. If somebody loses their business, they could lose their business, their savings, they get bad credit, they can't get started again. The people that work for them all lose their jobs. And there is absolutely nothing that justifies the government doing that to businesses. And so that's something we need to start being a little bit more proactive about, making sure that doesn't happen in the future. And I guess that's kind of where I'm at with it. We need to start taking more of a look at what government's doing, what lines they're crossing here, and and whether it really is legal and constitutional. Now, I'm not saying, hey, let's all, go have a party, let's start having rallies, let's all get everybody infected. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean, there's some levels of safety that I think everybody needs to observe. But the truth is, I mean, if a bunch of, friends, it's 30 friends want to get together in somebody's backyard, well, that's stupid. But they do have a right to do it. If a whole bunch of infected people go down and spit on people just because they want to infect them, yeah, they need to go to jail. That's assault. But it's every bit as much an assault by the governments to actually target businesses and shut them down and ruin people's livelihood. That's just as much an assault as somebody spitting at you with COVID. And so there's some of the issues that I think we really, as a nation, need to start looking at. We haven't done it up to this point, and I think we need to. And I think the Bill of Attainder is one of the big ones, because most of the laws that are out there are, in fact, a Bill of Attainder. They're going and targeting people. The IRS tax code is a great example. They divide people up into buckets based on your income. They set you a tax rate, and certain people are deprived more than other people based on their income. And so the only way for them to avoid it is to become poverty stricken. Well, that doesn't really work because the punishment is already there then. And a lot of people don't understand that. Our founding fathers did talk about this. Whenever they first created the country, they talked about the fact that the British government used to do things like that. They'd set different tax levels, and they would define buckets and deprive people. And we've got that going on right now. A tax code that is unfathomable, with rates and exemptions all over the place, that basically target some groups and not other groups. And now, one of the other things is, and I will talk about this for a second, there was an accounting firm that did something. I did it years ago, and an accounting firm did it 2-3 years ago. And what they did was they took a look at taxation per person. So we're talking sales tax, property taxes, federal income tax, state income tax, local income tax, all the way across the board, all the taxes that you end up paying. And the average American is paying on about 51% of their income as taxes, which is insane. Our founding fathers said Americans would never even put up with 10% taxation because it was abusive. And here we are at over 50%. And we're letting it happen. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. The Democrats say every single day they want to increase taxes more and more. They want to push more and more on people. And they want to keep bringing money in. But the truth is it doesn't work that way. There was a study done in California. The legislature wanted to know how to increase tax revenue in California, hired an accounting firm to do it. The accounting firm ran the numbers across the board, front to back. And what they found is the best way to increase the taxes coming into the government was to get rid of corporate taxes. And I know it's not popular with a lot of people because they think, oh, the big corporations, they think one of the big corporations are just making money off of that. They're just simply skimming off the top and they're screwing everybody. But the truth is, if there's no corporate tax, then corporations are incentivized to keep the money in the corporation. Not to give it to the CEO, because that's income tax. Not to give it to their buddies, that's income tax. They're incentivized to keep it in that company, grow the company, put more people to work, which increases tax base. And this was all done by the accountants over in California. They did it in order to show how this actually works. The legislature looked at that and said, wait, cutting corporate taxes will reduce taxes. This is nonsense. Threw the whole thing away. And didn't even bother to look at what it was because they just didn't care. Because you can't raise revenue by cutting taxes on something. And they simply don't understand the way all that works. That leads me to something else I was going to talk about, which is how our economy works and how all economies work, really. Whenever you have an economy that's actually running, there's something called wealth creation. And most of the leftists don't believe in it. They believe that it's a zero-sum game. What they believe is that there's a certain amount of money in the economy, and if the rich have money, the poor don't. And so if you take a look at the net worth of all the rich people, then they've done that by stealing it from the poor. And they don't really understand how it works. And I have a pretty good example I've used before, and I'm going to talk about it here. If you have a guy, let's say he has $5 million, and he decides he wants to build $1 million home. He goes ahead and builds that $1 million home and employs all the workers, gets all the materials, they all build the home. And when it's all said and done, that guy now has $4 million. He has a $1 million home, so he's still worth $5 million. But everybody that was involved in that project, all the people that sold him goods, all the people that did the work, they also have $1 million that he gave them, he spent with them. So instead of having $5 million, there's now $6 million floating around because of that guy. Excuse me, drink some water. There's now $6 million floating around because of that guy. If he does the same thing and he wants to build a factory so he can make more money, and it doesn't even matter if he's greedy, it really doesn't matter. He builds a multi-million-dollar factory. He's paying all those people to build that factory. He's still worth exactly the same amount he was to start with, but now there's a factory here and all those workers have been paid all that money. So now instead of the $6 million, you've got $9 million running the economy. He starts that factory up and starts paying people, making goods. Those people are actually getting profit out of that factory, and he's getting profit out of that factory. So you're getting more and more net worth in the society. And the point I wanted to get to is whenever you're creating wealth in society, you have to create a product. And no offense to salespeople, no offense to service people. As a matter of fact, I'm a service person myself. But whenever you're doing sales or service, you're not creating anything. Nothing. What you're doing is transferring ownership or providing a service, but there's no inherent wealth creation for the most part. If you're creating a product in a factory or you're designing something that's going to be built here in America, then you're taking those raw goods, you're putting them together. Say it costs $10 to make a product and you sell it for $50. That product's worth $50. You've created $40 of value for each one of those pieces of product goes out the door. And right now what we've done is we've outsourced all that to China. So what we're doing is we're designing things and we're selling things and we're consuming things, but the manufacturing's happening in China. So the Chinese are creating the wealth and the Chinese are getting rich. And we basically are falling apart. And we've done that because we've allowed our outsourcing to be pushed in this direction. And we've done it largely because of regulation. Businesses are being slammed down on. Regulation to run up, to get a business up and running is out of hand. I remember quite a few years ago, the CEO of Intel was talking about why they outsourced all their stuff to foreign nations. And he had said that it cost $1 billion more over the lifetime of a factory built in America than it does for a factory built in other countries. And the reporter that was talking to him says, "You're talking about the labor fees." He says, No. He says, that's excluding the labor fees. That has nothing to do with labor. He says, just simply setting the factory up in America cost $1 billion more over the life of the factory than it does doing it in another country. All the differences in pay rates are on top of that. And keep in mind, a lot of the pay rates that you talk about, these foreign countries have these great pay rates. Yeah, they make less than us. But by the same token, they have to go through all the shipping, the customs, the importing of those items, and it starts to level that playing field as far as what the actual cost of that product is. Because while the labor is lower, the cost of shipping is higher, and then it kind of evens out when you come into if we built it here. So the labor cost is not as much of a disparity as a lot of people think. And the real cost comes from all the regulation, all the bureaucratic red tape, all the permits, all the nonsense that you have to do. And we need to start taking a look at that as well. Because if we're going to get our industries back into America, it has to be done by making it palatable for industries to be here. We cannot continue to attack our industries and bankrupt our industries because the government feels that they somehow need to get more revenue and they don't understand how an actual economy works. Most of those people up there have never worked a job, they've never run a business, they have no idea. And yet they're setting policies in place that are running our economy and really damaging it to a great degree. So those are the things I wanted to talk about. There's not a whole lot going on here in the chat, I see. I see Scott, my cousin, says he wants to wish he had the one topic bill down there. That's something that really needs to be done, and I think it needs to be done on the federal level too, because it's a mess. And there's tons and tons and tons of problems with that. They just add pork to it. It's one of the things that they do. But, and I know other people are going to watch this later on. If anyone wants more information on any of this stuff, I will be happy to do more in-depth podcast or put information up on the web if somebody wants to see specific information on any of this stuff. I didn't want to go into everything deeply because we'd be here for the next day or two. There's just so much that you can cover as far as the details and minutia and stuff. But I really, really do hope that people kind of take this and really kind of run with it. No, I'm not running for office, Josh. I've been asking, believe it or not, there was a ballot initiative to sign me in as a write-in one time. I told them no. They did it anyways. I declined. I didn't want it. And they didn't get enough write-ins to do it either. But I think we really need to kind of do something to change this nation. And I think we all need to kind of take a personal stake in this. And it's got to be more than just showing up at a rally. Rallies are great, don't get me wrong. Flooding a phone system in Congress so that they can't even make any phone calls because it's just inundated with calls complaining about something, that'll make a much bigger impact than a bunch of people having a rally somewhere. So that's the kind of thing I think we ought to do. I think we need to take a very, very clear look at it, talk about what's the most efficient way to do some of this stuff, and actually put together some groups to do it. And I think we can do that. So I welcome anybody who wants to talk about it. You can message me. I got a Facebook account. I will catch up with it. I'm not a big Facebook person. I'm not on all the time. I get yelled at all the time because I don't jump in on all the conversations. I'm not trying to change the position of the leftists because they're not changing the position. They don't really care. They just want to yell at me and call me names, which is what they usually do, so I don't bother. But if you do want to get involved in any of this, you do want more information on anything, please let me know. You can, like I said, you can message me. You can actually post. I will see most of it, I guess. But I may not see it immediately. It may take me a little while to wade through it. And I guess that's all I have to say for today. We're at about half an hour, so I'm going to cut it off at this point. But if you'd like to see me do in-depth things on specific topics, let me know. I will do them if you want to do them. And I will keep them running. So thanks for tuning in, guys. I appreciate your time, and I will catch you later.